All right, so we are back. What we're talking about here is during the streams, we've been building up some community questions for Goofy and the development team. These are not highly specific questions like, are we going to get Silver Surfer? Are we going to get MAAR? Is there going to be a mobile version? These are more overarching, broad questions that a lot of people have asked on my streams or they ask in the YouTube comments. They're ones that I had also that I think well represent questions the community would ask if they could bend Goofy's ear a little bit. So question one, the original timeline was 4.5 years. March, February of 2012, I think it was, all the way up to September of 2016, about 4.5 years. My question is, how quickly will we go through the original timeline before we see the new content? What will be the drip feed of when the game releases and we're doing Spec Ops 1, PvP 1, how long will it take us to see Spec Ops 32, PvP 37, whatever it was? And he said, it won't be our intention to purposefully withhold original content, but we're not rushing development to get it out. We also won't give out scraps of stuff that we've already played. But with that in mind, I think you're going to get to the new content pretty fast, along with being sprinkled in with the old. I asked him a little bit of a follow-up on that, and he said, we're hoping beta 6 is the last beta. So there you go. And the next release will contain all original content as well as some new content. So some of the things that you've never seen before that are Redux only, you're going to see a little bit quicker than perhaps the community thought. Question 2, how much original content is already vaulted? I understand now this is a confusing question. What I meant is how much new already created Redux content is there? In other words, has the development team made 2 years of new content, 1 year, 3 years? Goofy's original answer was, as of right now, all of Season 1, Story 1, and Spec Ops 1 through 11 should be completely playable. So that means when you see Beta 6, you should be able to see all of Season 1 and 11 Spec Ops over here. So I asked him a little bit of a clarifier, and he said the content team has created at least 3 seasons worth of content. That includes Spec Ops, the one-shots, the covert tasks, and they're in varying degrees of completion. I'm aware of close to 50-plus characters ranging from the designed to ready for animation. So that is a lot of work that the content development team has ready to go. So when I ask how much is already vaulted, in other words, secure and ready to go, Goofy's words are a lot, and then there is a bunch that are in nearly complete stages. The ISO problem. How are you going to deal with multiple Spec Ops that use the same color? Because Spec Ops are, evergreen. What'll happen when you get to a Spec Ops that also uses blue ISO, the same as a Spec Ops like 10 Spec Ops ago? And he said there is no problem there. The UISO stash is the same among all Spec Ops. The only thing the color does is change aesthetically. So what that means is no matter what color the Spec Ops was originally, green, black, purple, red, whatever, your ISO stash is your ISO stash. The color is only a visual indicator. Like a Christmas bulb on a tree is still a Christmas bulb, even if it's a red color or a green color. That's what he's saying, so there's going to be no conflict. Your stash is your stash. You're going to apply it to any Spec Ops that you are playing. That means you may eventually need to be conservative with your ISO stash. You may do 2 Spec Ops in a row and be tapped out and maybe have to build back up before you jump into another Spec Ops. Fine by me. I mean, there does need to be some checks and balances to running rampant in the game and just beating it in like 5 days straight. Question 4. What would the UI look like when dealing with multiple colors of Spec Ops, i.e. at the flight deck level? And he said, well, you're only going to be in one active Spec Ops at a time. You can switch back and forth without resetting your progress, but you don't get the initial UISOs either. So, for example, if you play Spec Ops 10 up to Task 20, and then switch to Spec Ops 11, the progress won't be lost if you switch back. So this question is moot in the way that question 3 was answered. There is no problem with the colors at your flight deck level. However, this is an interesting answer in that you can get up to a certain task in a Spec Ops, reach a stopping point. For example, you need to deploy rescue, but you don't own rescue. So you could stop that Spec Ops, jump into a different one, progress, maybe then you get rescue, go back to that Spec Ops you were running, and resume from there. Question 5, will there be fan submittals for PvP AI defensive teams? In other words, could the development team maybe have a contest to say, hey, before the next season of PvP, can you submit a defensive team? Give me an agent, give me 4 pieces of gear or 5, depending on where it is. Give me 4 or 5 pieces of gear, give me a suit, give me 2 characters, and explain the reason why you think it works as a defensive team. And then maybe the content team will pick 5 of the best entries and put them on defense of the next season. And you get to be like, yay, everybody's fighting my defensive team. Goofy's response is that will be decided closer to the release of pure PvP AI. So it's a possibility, but he's being a little mum on that one. How will the team take into account power creep of the OG tunes? Meaning, when we get so deep in the game, how will people still breathe life into Black Widow and Iron Man and Hawkeye? Being an insider, I know the answer to this. I wanted a publicly available answer to it for you guys. So Goofy said there are routes that have been talked about amongst the coders and content creation. We do not intend to go down that route makes, for example, Agent 13 stronger than a worthy. Agent 13 is a character that has been publicly announced as coming as an original tune. In other words, the content development team has created Agent 13. She will be in the game at some point. That's what the usual game logic would say, but it would make no sense. So something needs to be done about the characters or uniforms that were really unbalanced and screw up the status quo. We're still deciding on the best way to do it, but we've discussed it extensively, and it's a concern we've had to face and also tackle. So this is a non-specific answer. You may see somebody get an ISO or a uniform. You know, remember Black Widow and like Iron Man, they got the Age of Ultron uniforms and everything like that. There may be some things like that that can take older characters and still make them relatively competitive. Now, since PvP is not really a thing where you're PvPing against other people, keeping up with the Joneses isn't that tough. So, yeah, it's going to be less necessary to breathe life into dead tunes because you're not going to be fighting people where it really matters. However, people have fan favorites, and I think the content development team is going to know that and try to keep a fan favorite so that they can keep up in PvE. Does the content team feel they've created any wicked combo so far? And that could mean a character with some agent gear or 2 characters combined. Goofy's response is a resounding yes with an exclamation point. The ones that come to mind involve at least one unannounced hero, so maybe that's for later. But as an initial example that I can reveal, even if it's not powerful as expected, but the 2 Valkyries. So if you haven't been keeping up with the information, we have the original Valkyrie that is often referred to as the Valkyrie. The blonde one with the bandana, cone tits and everything, and the spear and the horse. But then Rayenleaf, I think I pronounced that right. Rayenleif, maybe? The movie Valkyrie, considered a Valkyrie, the one we know from the movies, she has been publicly announced. So what Goofy is saying is there is a wicked combo that exists if you bring the 2 Valkyries to combat. And the eighth and final question that we are asking is, will you be able to release info on how to mod the game ourselves? This was an important question about a year ago. So when the game was in Flash, Goofy had intended to release a tutorial telling you how you can do sprites, how you can do actions. If you wanted to bring Batman into Redux, which the team does not support, it's the no Mugen rule. How can you do that? He was going to release a tutorial on it. Now that we're in Unity, which is a much more complex but better system, I know for a fact Goofy said that's more difficult. So I've asked him a question in a way that he could publicly talk about it. And he said, no. Officially endorsing it through a tutorial opens up a lot of problems with potentially corrupted save files that will later be reported as bugs that we'd have to cover because we allowed it. If players want a mod, they can for sure, but it's going to be a personal decision, and you're going to need to find people who know Unity, who could talk about it, and you potentially could have risks. So, the team is not putting out an official stance on how to mod the game. If you know Unity coding and things like that, yeah. So he expanded on that and said, as of right now, modding characters will not be an easy thing. Changing names, stats, stuff, that's fine. Animations won't be easy because of Unity, and it would require us releasing the full source code, which would have to be a coder group decision when the time comes. So it essentially is revealing a lot about the project to release the source code just so people could put Superman and Batman in the game, or put a uniform in the game for Quicksilver that isn't there, like one of the Marvel Future Fight uniforms. We know this is tough for Unity, and Goofy has basically backed that up, and I was kind of correct in that. So to the people who are maybe hoping to add crazy characters to the game, or bring DBZ characters in there, or Naruto characters in there, Scorpion from Mortal Kombat, that actually would be kind of cool, or Sub-Zero, or Quan Chi, who's the new seasonal character in Mortal Kombat. Yeah, that's going to be tough. So don't get your hopes up on that one. So there is the question and answer from the community to Goofy. I hope that gives you guys a lot of information, and gives you some information both on Beta 6 and what the final versions of the game will look like when they are released. So, as I said in my last video for the Beta 5.5 teaser, which is a teaser for Beta 6, Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy New Year. Don't know if I'll have any videos out before the holidays resolve. There will be one more stream. It'll be Wednesday the 20th. Yeah, Wednesday the 20th. From 3 to 5 p.m. Stop on in if you want to hang out, see how Beta 5.5 is as we put it through its paces. If not, then Merry Christmas Eve, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, and I will see you in 2024.